Everyone has some sort of a closet that's become too small. A closet is no place to live, and I want to support as many people as I can in stepping out of that prison into the fullness of life that's waiting for them on the other side of that closet door. I'm Nancy Shadlock from Centered Life Coaching. Join me in listening to these Coming Out Chronicles. Get curious about your story, and then see what good things are waiting for you on the other side of your closet door. Today's guest is someone that I kept hearing her name in different circles and different groups, and different people that I know would mention it. And I started following her on Instagram, and I was like, I feel like I know her, but I don't know where from. And then she came on the podcast, and as we were going afterwards, we kept playing this like bingo, trying to figure out who we knew of the same people and where we might have been in the same room or something together. And we still haven't figured it out, but I think it's going to come. I'm sure that we've been in each other's vicinity at some point. But today was just really fun to visit and hear more about her life and understand deeply where she's coming from, because I've lived many similar things, and I know that her story is going to resonate with many of you as well. I think that you'll really enjoy it. She does talk a little bit about Exodus and coming, or like ex-gay ministries and things, so that's a bit of a trigger warning. But it's really fun to hear where she's come from and where she's going, and I think you'll enjoy it. Stacey, it's so awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. I feel like we're old friends, and I don't know how we're old friends, maybe in another life, but there's just something that drew me to you, and I was like, I'm going to reach out because I think this will be fun to
Yeah.
chat with you.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm glad you did, because I've thought the same thing for a while too. So it's meant to be, I guess. Here
It's
we are
time.
finally. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I look forward to hearing your story and seeing what similarities and things I can
Yeah,
learn from you and all that stuff.
for sure. For sure.
So jump right in then and tell us, if you want, you can start with telling us a little bit about who you are and then jump into your coming out
Okay,
story that you want to share with us.
sure. Well, currently I'm an artist working in the animation industry. I have for about 10 years, and just recently started doing illustrating and writing kids' books. Yeah, and I live in Maple Ridge, BC for the next month or so. We're moving to Chilliwack end of June, with my wife Tammy and our two kids. Robson is 5 and our son Hudson is 3. So we never sleep. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, I think my story is sort of parallels a lot of like LGBTQ people of faith. I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, in like a quite a conservative evangelical home. So I was like I was very evangelical. So I was very like vanilla. Like I never swore. I never had alcohol. I had only Christian friends. I thought like, you have to be 100% like perfect to be a Christian. And like I only went to like youth camp, like church youth camp, and like church every Sunday, and like crusaders, which is like Christian brownies. My mom taught that. And so like I grew up like totally immersed in church, and then youth group, and all my friends were from youth group. And weirdly enough, though, I did go to public school, which is kind of shocking looking back. But uh, yeah, and I mean, typical, like I just grew up, it was like a very like happy home. My mom was pretty like very involved in church, and my dad had his own business. And I have one brother who's younger than me, and I like loved my life in church, and I didn't really think much of it. And I just assumed I would marry like probably a youth pastor who like he would have to be a music youth pastor though, because I love music. So I was like, obviously I'm gonna marry a youth pastor who's got like floppy hair and like a cool sense of style. I had it all mapped out.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and then in like I was like in my later teens, I started like I guess having crushes on girls, but I didn't have any language for it, because like when I was that age, like there was no Google, there was no internet, there was no like nothing to like look up these things. And I was pretty shy about that stuff, and I wasn't allowed to go to sex ed class, so I didn't have any terms for anything. So I just thought, "Oh, that's weird. I really like being around this girl," or whatever that is. But I still thought I'm gonna date a guy, and then like my best friend at the time like kind of became very close, and then it sort of turned into like a sexual relationship. But even then, I still didn't know really what was going on. I
Mm.
was kind of like, "Oh, this is really close with somebody," and then, but internally, I was freaking out because I knew there was things going on that probably God wasn't happy about, and that I was really confused about. So I went to the library to like literally look up, what these terms are. So I looked up like, what does homosexuality mean? And when I read it, I was like, oh shoot, I think this is me. And it was so shocking and like embarrassing and like shameful. I was like kind of paralyzed. So I kind of tried to like stop that stuff happening with this friend, but it's really impossible to do that. So it kind of went on for a couple more years, and
Did you
it
talk
came
about it with her at any point? Like, where was she
well, and
with
because
it all?
we were close from church, so she was like also a Christian, and like she didn't seem to be as guilted by it. I definitely had the major Christian guilt constantly, and then when I kind of found out, like I'm like, I think this is like lesbianism, and I was so like couldn't even barely say it, and was like so shocked, and she was like, oh, we'll stop it. She agreed that it wasn't right, but she didn't have like as much urgency to quit it as me. And then the relationship itself got very like, she got very possessive and sort of obsessive, and sort of kind of tried to pull me away from like our friends, and so I knew it was becoming unhealthy for other reasons. So I did eventually like extract myself from that, but it was really lonely because everybody in my life was a Christian, so I couldn't talk to anybody about it or
Right.
get advice or explain what was going on. So after I got away from her, I did try to come out to my mom, and that was an epic fail. It went just terribly. So I kind of thought, okay, she's not a safe person to come out to, so I'll just like wrap that back up, and I
Mm.
won't mention that again. And I went to a Christian counselor for a couple of years because I thought that was a weird misstep, but I'll get back on track, and I'll figure out like where that's coming from. And she because she was a Christian counselor, she was kind of like more directed me to the ex-gay route, and was like, maybe you have like things missing in your life that you're trying to drawing these attractions are coming from, and maybe it's helpful if you like go like read these books and talk to these people at this ex-gay ministry. So I did try and go that sort of ex-gay route for a while, and that wasn't very helpful for me, but it was good to try, just because I thought maybe that's what God's wanting me to do. And so during that time, I met my now wife, and we met at church as well. And we were just friends for the first year, and I sort of shared with her like, oh, I'm struggling with this same-sex attraction that I'm trying to change, and I'm trying to figure out how to sort of right myself. And she's like, I'll be your support. I'll help you. I'll just kind of be your support, because I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And she obviously didn't know about her own sexuality. She was sort of just she'd become a Christian later in life, and was just happy to be who she was, and never really thought about dating people. And so we were friends for about a year, and then I went actually to an Exodus, which was the ex-gay ministry. I went to a conference in the States for a week because I thought that will really change me. I'll go to a conference and I'll meet people, and it'll be intense. And so while I was at the conference, I came back and I told her about it, and while I was gone, she was like, I have to confess that I think I'm falling in love with you, and this is really unfortunate for you because I'm your only support in becoming straight. So we of course end up dating, very closeted for about 7 years. And
But wait, you went to
yes.
Exodus and it didn't miraculously heal you?
No, I no, it didn't. I kissed a girl and a guy during that conference, so that was confusing. I was again still very vanilla and had no idea really what goes on there. There was just so much like suppression and, people just trying to pretend so hard that they're happy and trying so hard to like, I'm changed, but it was really eye-opening, but no, it didn't help my attraction go away. So that was the end of my ex-gay journey. And yes, so then Tammy and I sort of started dating, but yeah, still very closeted. And for about 7 years until I finally, right before my 30th birthday, managed to find peace with both. And then came out, and then we got engaged and got married. That's the like longer nutshell version, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so did you and Tammy kind of start to come out at the same time? Was it parallel a bit?
So yeah, sort of. I mean, she like yeah, it was difficult because we had all obviously a lot of the same friends, and my family is super conservative, and her family wasn't though. They weren't really Christian, so they didn't really have an issue with it, but she didn't really want to be public about it because I was closeted more than her. So we yeah, we it kind of came out when we got engaged finally. Then we told a few people like on our own. And then this was early Facebook days, because then she put on Facebook is engaged too. And I had no idea that it would go on my wall. I was still learning. And so I was like, oh shoot. And then I was like, oh well, I guess I just came out to everybody. So then I was getting tons of private messages after that. So yeah, that was 2010 when we got engaged.
That's amazing. Yeah, I remember that too, that putting it on Facebook is such a
Yeah.
big step. It's like
Oh
Facebook
man.
official and
Totally.
so big.
Just yeah, especially when you like are coming out, because it's not yeah, I mean, that's where you tell really everybody, and you just don't talk to everybody that way. So it's sort of
Mhm.
a declaration, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, that was pretty scary, but
Hmm.
rip the band-aid off.
Yeah. Was there any other like important conversations with people that you had along the way that something kind of snapped or triggered in you that you're like, okay, I need to have this conversation with this person who's important to me?
In terms of me like being
Coming
okay with
out.
myself, or just um well, I think I had a ton of conversations with I would always meet with like pastors, because I thought for some reason they have all the answers. So I would, along those many years of me struggling, I like emailed lots of different pastors, and I went to school in Ontario for 4 years. So I kind of found pastors there, and I would meet with them, and they all kind of had the same idea. They had various levels of like, we love you, but it did always come back to like, there's these verses that still say it's pretty wrong. So really, like, the end of the day, like, it was sort of, I had to come between me and God and to find that peace. Really, it wasn't like somebody told me something that just clicked. I think it just, I was struggled for like 13 years, and I kind of came to the end of my rope, and it was like, either I move forward in this life and like be out fully at either as like a gay Christian or just as a celibate Christian. But I have to choose one, because it's just agonizing, like living in that middle ground and not really fully
Mhm.
living your life. It was
Yeah.
really soul crushing. So, and I couldn't keep like dragging Tams along that sort of closeted road.
Right. Because she was more ready to come out sooner.
Yes, she was ready probably 1 year in, so it took me 7, and
Hmm.
she was like, I mean, I don't really know why, but she did wait for me to be okay. But she also knew she couldn't rush it, because, that would just fall apart probably down the road. So, yes, thankfully she did wait.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, it can be really, it has to be in your own timing, but I totally
Hmm.
identify with that feeling of like it it's the kind of almost just like two-facedness, and that can be exhausting to try and like not fully be who you are out in the world. And
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I always wanted to live my life with authenticity, and I
Mhm.
always feel like that's sort of one thing that God's asked of me as well. And I think that was really what was so difficult, is just knowing that I just couldn't be authentic in living who I was, because it was so torturous. And So it just felt so freeing when I could finally embrace like all of me and sort of stop sitting in the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you didn't get smited?
Not so far. I mean, I don't know, like I feel like we got married in 2011, and right, we actually have our 10-year wedding anniversary next weekend, or this weekend
Mm.
on the 15th. And I mean, obviously, as any marriage, there's major ups and downs, but I feel like it's been so much peace, like moving forward in life from that place inside where you finally feel like you're being authentic and you're embracing your whole life, the one that God hopefully has put in front of you. And I think as a Christian, like you kind of look at like, what is the fruit of your life, and what is it good fruit or bad fruit? And I feel like I have to see that it looks like good fruit, the relationships we have with each other and friends, and the different things we get plugged into. And so I have to trust that, and I think if people have their own opinions, that's their own opinions, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, what kind of good fruit have you seen with your life? What has opened up for you on the other side of the closet?
Well, just there's been so many opportunities that I feel like, because you're so when you're kind of working on coming out, you're so looking inwardly and focused on sort of yourself, and after you can kind of put that aside and be like, okay, I'm fine with me, and now you can finally look outward and move forward and sort of see like, how can I use my life for others? How can I, like, what can I do with this now that I feel great about it? And obviously having kids is a huge journey, and just us, we've done a lot of leading of different support groups for LGBTQ people, and I've had endless different Zoom calls with people that are just struggling, and I just feel like I don't have answers necessarily, but I'm so happy to just share like how God has brought me here. And I don't think I'd be able to do that if I was still, quietly agonizing inside. It would sort
Mm-hmm.
of be just a bit of a waste. Yeah.
Yeah, so much to offer.
Yeah. Hopefully.
And what's your next coming out journey?
Well, I think the next journey is going to be, you know, probably working with the book and um, seeing how what doors that opens, and seeing how that progresses, and see the reactions of different people in my life that are still not affirming, and that will, maybe they won't read it, but they'll hear about it, and we'll see. That'll be a sort of a whole other version of coming out and sort of letting go of my own story, really, to
Mm-hmm.
let it kind of take its own flight.
Yeah, and getting so much more visible. That's really huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I'm just, yeah, I'm just now people are starting to read it. I guess the early versions, like for different various marketing reasons, and so it does feel a bit strange because it's something you work on in a vacuum. Sort of, I just kind of work in my little computer and draw and write, and then kind of forget that other people outside of my 10 friends are gonna read it, and so there's sort of a bit of a scary responsibility with that, and sort of I just have to let it go because
Mm-hmm.
you know just let it out there. Yeah.
Tell us about the book. What's it called and what's it like?
Hmm. It's called Still Stace, My Gay Christian Coming of Age Story, and it did initially start as like a picture book that I wanted to do for my kids, and because I've always wanted to do a project that was like sort of merging my work as an artist and my coming out journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, maybe I'd do a film or something, and that never really worked out. So I was actually in a therapy session, and like the idea of like talking to my younger self and sort of healing together just sort of came to me as like a book version. So I did initially call it Dear Younger Gay Me, and um and it's just sort of progressed after getting an agent, and then after getting a book deal and an editor. It's sort of grown into a young adult memoir. And so I never would have signed up for that initially. I never would have, but here we are, and I'm really grateful. So yeah, it sort of outlines just my journey of the coming of age story from age 16 till we got married at age 30, and the many ups and downs throughout, which I think, even if you're not gay or not Christian, you'd still identify with just the human ups and downs of of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you said it's a graphic novel?
It's sort of a
Or is
graphic
it
novel, but
novel?
my style of art is not necessarily classic graphic novel. So it's technically called an illustrated memoir.
Okay,
So it's more of like a novel that's like peppered with a whole bunch of illustrations throughout. So
cool.
yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
exciting. I think that's going to be
Thank
so
you.
needed. And like
I
thinking
hope
about
so.
young you who had no terminology, felt really alone of like, there's no one for me to talk to about this. To then like
Hmm.
thinking of someone like that now to they could get this book and see themselves in it and have this new understanding.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, that was the one thing during like those 13 years of struggling. I just remember thinking like I couldn't find one person to talk to. Like there was no gay Christian out there. There was nobody, there was just ex-gay people or Christian people. And I just remember thinking, I just want to talk to one woman who's like been okay with herself and is like,
Mm,
and still loves Jesus and can have a family possibly like. And so I just thought if ever I can get to that place, I'll share, how I got here, just in case there's somebody like me who would need to hear it. And so I didn't really think it'd be a book, but here we go. So yeah, I'm I'm really happy to have the privilege to do it.
mm-hmm. When I was in my coming out years in high school, I read a book. I wasn't even in my coming out time yet, but it was like starting to come in my own consciousness. And I read
Mhm.
Philip Yancey's What's So Amazing About Grace. And
Yeah.
do you remember in there was that
Yes.
one chapter about Mel White, this
Yeah.
pastor who came out and he lost his whole life and wife and ministry and all these things. And I was like gripped with fear and just
Mm,
like, oh no, what if this happens to me? Because I already had the sense that I
mm,
wanted to be in like ministry of some sort or helping people.
mm.
And the only concept I had was like, yeah, marry a youth pastor or some other pastor
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
go towards that. And like, what if my whole life falls apart because it's discovered that I'm a farce? And having no
Exactly.
inclination that there could be a possible way forward where I could be congruently who I am and just like be in some kind of ministry and marry a woman. And it's just like, what?
Exactly.
It's
It's
crazy.
amazing. Oh, I love that. I've thought the same thing sort of similarly recently where like I used to look at pastors talking and be like, "Oh, I'd love to speak one day up there." But then when realize you're gay, you're like, "Oh, well, I'll never be welcome in church, never mind speak." But now I do get invitations to speak, and it's because I'm a gay Christian, and I
Mm-hmm.
just love how sometimes like God sort of hears those dreams in your heart and is like, just wait, like they'll come to bloom when you're ready, and it'll actually be more beautiful than maybe you thought. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's sometimes it's such a huge, beautiful gift that we can
Totally.
receive. Yeah.
Oh, I was telling you about the Philip Yancey because I I read that and was so scared, but again, I didn't have anyone to talk about it with. And so I wrote him.
Yeah.
And
Oh, you
Philip
did?
Yancey wrote me back.
No way. What did
Couldn't
he
believe it.
say?
And he was like, "Okay, like I hear you. And is there someone in your actual vicinity that you could talk to that knows you in your real life?" And I was like,
Oh,
"Okay, yeah, probably that's wise." And so then I started to chat
wow.
with youth pastors and things like that. And
Oh, that's so interesting. Oh
yeah,
man. That's cool that he wrote you back though.
he was so cool. Yeah, I should
Yeah.
write him again and see where he's
You
at.
should, yeah. Update.
I've been thinking it'd be cool to have Mel White on the podcast too, because see what's
Yeah,
going on with his life.
totally. Oh yeah, it'd be super interesting for sure.
So you didn't have any inclination that you'd write a book, but here you are, and you've now got two books.
I do. The other book is a picture book called Rainbow Boy, and I did not write it. The writer is Taylor Rounzian, and I illustrated it. And Um, that's kind of an interesting story. I signed on with my agent because of my initial book deal, my or book idea, Dear Younger Gay Me. I got my agent from that, and maybe like a couple months after I signed on with her, she got contacted by a publishing house in the States, and they said, we're doing this picture book and we're really looking for an LGBTQ illustrator, and we saw Stacey's portfolio and we really want her to do it. And so she sent me the manuscript, and I read it, and it's beautiful, and it's about Taylor's daughter, actually, who's a gender conforming boy. And so the story is really beautiful, and I can totally identify because our kids are similar. Like, just, what's your favorite color? And if it's a boy or a girl, like, it can be any color, and boys can wear mermaid tails, and they can have tutus, and they can play basketball, and you don't have to be in a little box. So it was really fun to do illustrations
Mm.
for such an important story.
Yeah.
There's not enough stories like that out there that sort of encourage, because even our kids, being raised by two lesbians, are, our daughter's now just starting preschool, and she already is like, comes home and is like, no, that's a boy thing, that's a girl thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
Yeah.
so ingrained in us. It's so quickly.
So crazy.
So yeah, it is. So yeah,
And
that's been really cool.
we tried so hard too to not like gender our kids' clothes and things, but
Hmm.
like inevitably all the girl stuff is pink and
I
all the boy
know.
stuff is blue and green. It's just like, ugh.
I know. It's easiest as babies. They have so much great, like, neutral baby stuff, but
Yeah.
as soon as you get older, and I think, I don't know, that, like, our kids are naturally, like, drawn to, like, our son, like, loves construction stuff and
Yeah.
trucks, and like
Totally.
our daughter loves princesses. Like, it just is. But I think a lot of it
Mm-hmm.
is because it's geared for them that way as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
But yeah,
it
that's
was, yeah.
awesome to have
Thank
more books
you.
like that for kids to read and find. So Rainbow Boy,
Yeah,
that's a good
Rainbow
book that we
Boy.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just came out in January, so I'd love to do more picture books, like, kind of queer kidlit ideas, because there's just so many stories that aren't out there that
Mm-hmm.
you need to be. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's so important.
Mhm.
Tell me more about having an agent and like how that works. Because at some point I would like to write a book, and I'm sure other people
Mm.
listening would, love to write a book at some point. So can you walk us through what that
Mhm.
journey's been like for you?
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, well, I mean, as I said, I've been working in animation for about 10 years, and just, you don't need an agent for that, but I'd heard that some people who work in animation, they do kids books, and typically if you want to get into the bigger publishing houses and that, then you do need an agent for that to represent your work. So I just thought, like, I have this idea of my own journey, and kind of done like maybe 3 illustrations for just the style that I wanted it to look like. And then I just Googled, like, agents looking for LGBTQ ideas. And then I realized that certain agents are looking for certain book ideas, and
Mm.
certain agents are, like, open at certain times for submissions. So lots of agents, like, they'll say, I'm closed to queries, or I'm open to queries. So you just sort of have to do your research and see which ones are open for which ideas. And then you have to write, like, a sort of a query letter, which is like a cover letter, and sort of just say, like, who you are, what you do, and your kind of what your book idea is. And in my case, I just attached my art portfolio, and I think I sent it to, like, maybe 6 agents. And I don't know if what's typical, because I don't know anybody else who has an agent, but I heard back the next day from a couple,
Mm.
and which I was really surprised about. But they both wanted to represent me, and one was a literary agent, and then one was an illustration agent. And so I talked to them both, and I just decided to sign with the literary agent because she just had a really great heart for my story specifically. So yeah, and she had a lot of great ideas of what we could do in the future and that. So yeah, I signed with them, um and then, yeah, kind of, you just work alongside them to develop the story, and then they do all the the legwork to send it out to editors. And it's pretty amazing to just have that sort of those doors open, which normally, I would have no access to. So
Right. And do
yeah,
you pay them right away or once the book is out? How's that work?
they take a royalty only if you get a book deal. So
Okay.
I have heard that if an agency sort of says that there are other fees, that they're probably not a reputable agency. So Yeah, so they've done a ton of work just to develop different ideas. But yeah, the only way they get paid is that they'll just take that percentage off of the whatever advance we get from a book deal. So yeah, it works really well. It's nice to have
Mhm.
the help and yeah, it's been amazing for sure.
That's so cool. Is she
Thanks.
Canadian?
No, in New York City. I think
Okay.
most of them are in New York City. So, um, but they're used to having clients all over the place. I think they're usually either in New York or London, England. So
Okay.
seems to be the hot spots of agents. But now, I mean, because of COVID, which is nice, everything's so easily online. You can kind of connect anywhere. It sort of forced people to realize, oh, we can connect pretty easily all over the
Right.
place. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My coaching practice was always virtual, and now
Okay.
it's just like everyone else is ready to come now because it's
Mm-hmm.
easier. Everyone's more used to, okay, yeah, I could meet with you online.
Yeah, there's less hesitation because we just sort of had no choice for this last year. So
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of gifts that have come.
it's true.
Mm.
Very true.
Well, in kind of closing, what advice would you give for your younger self or someone who's a young Christian that's wondering if maybe they're queer now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, the most important thing is finding sort of safe people to talk to because I think that can be really damaging to open up to people that are, not safe because it can sort of I know for me anyway, it sent me down a lot of shame spirals and sort of deeper and deeper into the closet because just the fear every time I'd have a bad reaction, you just wouldn't want to put yourself out there again. So sort of surrounding yourself with safe people and nowadays there are a lot of ministries like in the States and Canada that are affirming, and there's the churches are slowly changing, but they're slowly getting there. I think they do exist now, the Christian ones that are affirming. So, and I mean, I always love getting emails myself. There's lots of people like yourself. There's lots of people out there that are, reachable on email, which is a
Hmm.
less scary way to reach out to somebody.
Right.
And yeah, I would just say try, keep talking and when you feel comfortable, and just know that you don't have to be fixed, that it'll feel freeing to just step into your authentic self and sort of just slowly discover who that is.
Hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can I ask how things have gone with your parents since you've fully come out?
Yeah. It's been up and down. I should say too that my brother also came out as gay. So that's been a big piece of this journey as well. He came out right when I was still struggling. I knew that he was gay, but he called me when I was away at school and said, just so you know, I wrote mom and dad a letter and I'm coming out and we're getting married in a month, like 2 months. And so that really scared me. And so that was a really, really tough thing just for me because I then felt so much more pressure to be the one who got fixed.
Mm,
And I'd always sort of felt like I should be the better one. Like he was a bit more of a rebel than me. So that definitely, it's not his fault at all, but I just felt a lot more pressure after that. Um, so that was really difficult. That was in 2008 that he got married. And so those last 2 years for myself definitely were super difficult for me. And um, and then, I didn't really talk to my parents too much. Like I'm close with them, but there's a lot of boundaries. When we moved out here to BC in 2010, and it's been a good decision just having provinces difference,
mhm.
just to have that physical space because I'd find it really difficult living in the same city as them. And I don't think I would feel like I could live as freely or authentically and be involved in, LGBT ministries like I am, because I feel like I would be kind of they'd be watching me a bit closer. Um, and it was definitely difficult when we were trying to get pregnant
Mm,
because like the one thing my mom had said when I finally came out, maybe like the third time or whatever, She, when we got engaged, and she said, whatever you do, just don't ever have kids because it's not fair to them. And that always stuck with me. So it was really
Mm.
difficult to, when we did begin that journey, and I didn't get pregnant. My wife Thames got pregnant for both kids, but and we waited until she was pregnant and past the 3-month mark to tell them. But that was a long, difficult journey as well, because I think they had to then face, what is this going to be for us? Do we want to be considered grandparents? A lot of hard questions that kind of come up. We can't really keep this quiet anymore.
Mm.
So, and I mean, they love our kids. They're Nana and Papa to our kids, and they drive out in the motorhome every summer for a couple weeks and spend time at our house. And so we've come a long way.
Mhm.
Um, they definitely wouldn't consider themselves affirming. They would, if I said tomorrow that we broke up and I'm straight, they'd be like, "We've been praying for this the whole every day." I'm sure they would totally say
Mm.
that, but yet they love Thames. They love our kids, and we do our best, to love each other and to have each other in our lives. So, I think as any family, there's things that come up that you sort of have to navigate. But I think that would probably happen even if I was straight. It's
Mhm.
just, we're also really different personalities. So yeah, it's an ongoing journey to love your family, I think. So even
Mhm.
more so when you're gay and you have a faith background. But yeah, never give up,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
boundaries.
that is really hard when you have like this exciting thing that you want to share about having a kid, and it's
Mm,
laced with this weird shame or judgment, and that's tough.
yeah, that's been, I think, something that a lot of straight people, maybe some straight people do deal with this, but I mean, every exciting decision in my life it's been like a funeral announcement to my parents.
Mhm.
Like coming out, getting engaged, the wedding, which they don't know what day it was, and
Mm.
have like getting pregnant, all these things that you typically can celebrate fully. I had to like sort of gear myself up to
Mhm.
have like the most difficult talk of my life. And it's really devastating. You sort of have to grieve that loss of joy, and sort of learn how to celebrate even though they aren't reacting that way, because you really want, of course you want your parents to be excited with you because it's an exciting thing. But they just aren't able to, because for them it's not an exciting thing, it's sad. So just to
Mhm.
sort of have that to have that tension, right, is it's it's tough for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's common. Like there's a lot of parents
Mhm.
who are like the evangelical Christians, even Catholic parents, like that are,
Mm,
they feel the weight of this, and it's hard. And I
mm,
just want to say, like, if you're a parent listening today and you're on the fence, like, kudos to you for listening to a podcast like this.
mhm, for
And
sure.
then also, like, reach out, because I'm sure Stacey or I would love to support you in that.
Mm,
I just had a retreat last month for parents of LGBT folks.
mm,
And it was so beautiful to see
amazing.
these moms show up and be like, okay, like I want 100% be there for my kid, but internally I can't quite be there yet.
Mm,
Like, let
mhm.
me have a safe space to wrestle through this so that I can show up. And it's so beautiful to see those
Yeah.
parents that are on that journey that are like, yes, I want to get there, but I'm honest about the fact that I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I always remind myself too. I mean, I took 13 years to be okay with myself,
Mm-hmm. Totally.
and so my parents are, on their own journey, and we're all just doing the best we can, and, staying true to the things that we feel inside, that are right, or right for us, and what God wants. And so it's a very complicated, layered thing. But I think I'm grateful that none of us have given up, but we sort of
Mm-hmm.
persevered. And I do
Totally.
hope to have, more conversations after the book comes out, because that's the tough thing, is it sort of captures a lot of painful conversations with them. And
Mm-hmm.
so, just out of necessity. And so I'm hoping, to have, a lot of follow-up conversations on where things are now. I'm not sure they will want to have those conversations, but I just think it's an important ongoing thing that a lot of queer people have to deal with, and a lot of parents, and it's really painful. So
Mm-hmm.
for sure, more conversations and grace and kindness, I think is so needed.
Mm-hmm. You know, the interesting thing that came up in that retreat was that this, like watching their kid come out, brought up a lot of things within them of like, oh, what ways am I not being 100% authentic in who I am? And like, how can
Mm.
I lean into being more truly who I am? And
Oh
it's just beautiful to
wow.
see that ripple effect of like, if you're in a posture of openness, it will bring up stuff to help you look at your own self and your own stuff. And yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, vulnerability breeds vulnerability, and
Mm-hmm.
that's, I think we all need more of that these days. It is beautiful to see that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Well, thank you for being a vulnerable example to us. And like this book writing is going to be a vulnerable thing. And I saw you kind of flinch when I said more visible. And I want you to have a phrase to take with you in this journey. And that is that visibility is liberty. And so
Mm,
anytime that you are getting more visible, you are getting more free yourself, but you're also liberating
mm,
others. So it's
mm.
important work.
Thank you. I'll hold on to that. I'll write it in my office here and
Mhm.
keep that close.
Visibility
Thank
is
you.
liberty.
All right. Thank you. I'll remember that for sure.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing with us today. Thanks for listening to the Coming Out Chronicles. If you enjoyed it, give it a like. And if you think it would be helpful for someone else, please share it with them. If you'd like to connect with me, reach out on social. I'd love to support you on the next chapter of your coming out story. Until next time, this is Nancy Shadlock from Centered Life Coaching.